people really don't understand this. I'm grasping it more and more as I'm working for myself and helping other folks. That just how powerful that stuff is, and how in fact how powerful we are to create our livelihood and our dreams, our life.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit, because I've seen The Secret. You've seen The Secret?
Yeah.
But I can't say, oh yeah, The Secret's really working for me, the law of attraction, oh yeah, it's all great. I can't say that.
I think the concept is there. I just, I think it's a little commercial, just like a lot of things are, but the information that they're bringing is solid. Yeah. It just depends on what works for people.
I mean, I can't say it's solid from my personal experience.
Have
Philip,
you worked
it
it?
Sounds like, well,
you have to believe
it sounds like
though.
it has for you. So can you tell us your experience of that?
Well, when I first started hearing about this stuff, as I said, I was in a place where things were not working too well for me at that time, and I was looking for expand my tools, and that's what you do when you're the kind of worker I am. You're always fascinated with how the brain works. You're a detective of the mind, so to speak. And I started studying it and reading it, and the first thing I thought was, there's no way I can have an informed opinion about this stuff unless I study it like crazy and then test it. I've got to know that it works from my own experience. So I started working with it, and for quite a long time, I didn't seem to be getting much of. And I was in a job that I hated, and I was feeling really depressed and upset. I had a sadistic boss, and gradually, then I got another boss, another job. Gradually, things started to change. It was funny because one of the big keys that I've learned about what they talk about is following your intuition, following your feelings, and trusting them. And that means you get an intuition to do something, do it. Don't ask questions, do it. And invariably, it's turning out right. It works. It's really interesting for me. And at first, though, I didn't understand that kind of stuff, and so I was stumbling around in the dark a lot. But gradually, I felt like I was starting to get a handle on it. I would do little tests, like I remember, just for the fun of it, I said, well, I'm going to see if I can see a flower today, as a way of, I put it out. I'd like to see a flower. I'd read this in a book, and it was just a novel. It was fun. This girl said she wanted to see a rose if things were going well for her life, and she smashed into a truck and got a crate of roses dumped on the front. Sort of tried to tell you, God, just one would have been fine. Well, I asked to see some mum plants.
Some what?
Some mums.
Chrysanthemums.
Yeah, well, the big yellow things like this. And this was just an experiment I was running. There were other things that happened that I was really trying to get from my life and make changes with. And I thought, well, I'm not going to cheat. I'm not going to go walking into a plant store. That's kind of cheating, right?
Right.
So I ended up sitting down with my wife in a restaurant that we love to go to up in Yorkville. And I told her about this, and she said, you really gave God a job, Those are plants that are only out in the fall, I think it is. And this was the spring, or this was the other way around, one or the other. And I said, oh, great. That just proves that I'm on the wrong track. At that point, I was still pretty pessimistic. So as I'm sitting there, I noticed my wife started to get this odd look on her face, and I said, what? She said, look at the tables. Every single one of them's got mums on them. What are you talking about? There's these little, and they're a variety. It's like, it talks about that, how it will come up. Don't demand that the universe produce it exactly your way. So a week or so later, I decided to try another experiment. God, I'd like to win the lottery. How many times have people thought of doing that? But I couldn't believe in it. Now, they say you're supposed to be able to believe it's real. So I backed off. I said, well, you know what, $1,000. I'm a pretty nice guy. I think if I could win $1,000, that'd be kind of great. So I bought a few tickets, and all I did was win a few more tickets. Nothing happened. But a day or so later, I got a check. I happened to get a check in my mail for $1,000 from my life insurance company. And I thought, what's that about? See, I was thinking I should get a lottery. That's what I'd asked for, after all. And I couldn't make any sense of it, so I just ignored it. I figured I'd gone and gotten some, they do our health plans, so I figured I'd gone and spent some money and maybe it was coming back, but I would have thought I remember $1,000. So a few days later, I'm walking through a mall thinking, well, I'll get another ticket. And then I stopped for a second, wait a minute, I gotta go check this out. I suddenly realized, I checked it out. It turns out that I used to be a life insurance agent 10 or 15 years ago. And what I didn't know was that when you sell the policy, even if you stop being an agent, as long as the policy's in force, you get the dividends or the commissions. And they had lost track of me, so they've been putting it in the bank all these years. And just at that time when I said I wanted it, they decided to go looking for some of these people and found me and sent me a check for exactly $1,000.
Wow.
It was,
wow. That's
and I've had
cool.
a number of things like that.
Yeah.
Those were tests. I've had other things where I was really wanting to make changes. But what happens is, it's not just, see, this is where maybe somebody could say it's not working. They may try a little bit, or they think they're reading it from a book and try a few things. The changes have to be inside here. I've gone from a place of, from my background, always having in the background a thought that the world is not a good place. It's not a happy place. It's unhappy. And you got an alcoholic dad, psychotic mom, things are really crazy, and one thing after another goes wrong through many, many years. It's not unusual to get a feeling the world is, some things are going to go wrong. No matter what I try to get into, I'll do my best with it, but nothing will go right. What happened as I was working with this stuff inside myself was I suddenly started, I remember the one day I was walking across the street, and a little thing that I'd been trying to get done was having some awkwardness with, and I said, it's not supposed to be like that, it's supposed to happen. And that's when I realized something was changing inside. I was starting to expect good things to happen. Mm-hmm. So it's somehow, you can't just flush the computer or throw out all the programs you've had in your life. But if you consistently work with stuff like this, you gradually change the mix.
Now, how do you do that? I mean, what's the process of doing that? Because it seems that's the key right there.
Shift of mentality.
You watch your thoughts, for one thing. You don't have to spend a lot of time doing that. You'll notice if you're feeling bad, that's the key. The key is to get to a place, generally speaking, of feeling good. Mm-hmm. Now, you can't do that all the time. Bad stuff happens, you mourn, you grieve, whatever you need to do, but just don't live there. But for instance, if I noticed that I was starting to feel depressed about my practice or about the economy or whatever, I would think, why am I bothering to think this way? Switch. And think about something that's just as real if I choose to make it real, mm-hmm. but more uplifting. How much I'm enjoying working with a couple of the people I'm working with, some of the breakthroughs they're making. Like, isn't that
the good
exciting?
stuff that's going on. It's
You
like,
got it.
and this goes back to the secret too, but it's like just looking at the situation and looking at that glass as being half full. And
Yes.
that
Mm-hmm.
comes from being grateful for the stuff that you realize, oh, I'm glad for all this. For
Yeah,
all
gratitude
the good
is
stuff.
gratitude is a huge, wonderful
Because that's
part
what
of it.
makes you reflect upon
Yeah.
what's good.
Yeah, I mean, I can feel it right now as you're talking about gratitude. I mean, I love that. I remember people who I look to and really admire, like Oprah, saying gratitude is something she practices every day. And right on. I mean, it's just your focus becomes something that's more uplifting, and it starts to spread. It starts to affect other people. Mm. And it has been such a blessing for me to discover this kind of stuff and really work with it, and now being able to share it. So I still am there for folks who come to me in a lot of pain, and I'm a good therapist, and I can do all that kind of work. But what I really get excited about is when, like some that I've worked lately with, it just only took 2 or 3 sessions to kind of stabilize the crisis they were
Mm-hmm.
into. And then I started to ask, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to be with your life? Because that was what was leading them into this pain in the first place. You see, that they were focused on dysfunction or pain or whatever.
But they were doing something that that wasn't resonating, that they weren't feeling good about, or?
Bottom line, yeah, whatever the somethings are,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
but they were not aiming for happiness. They were not paying attention to how they felt. They just thought life happens and I feel whatever occurs. But when you follow your passion, when you start following your dreams and what you enjoy, it feeds. You focus on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's magic. It really does start to move in a different direction. And I keep thinking about, did you ever see the movie The Titanic? Mm-hmm. Do you remember right near the beginning where the Titanic is just starting to get out to the ocean and it starts to open up and boom, it's a beautiful sunny day and it's going like mad, and the star of the show I think was right up at the bow overlooking. Mm-hmm. And the helicopter shot probably was how they did it, panned along the whole ship, and you saw the captain, tiny little figure on this giant bridge. Now he can give an order to the steersman who you can't even see. The guy will flip the wheel to one side, tiny little thing. Nothing will happen for a while, and that's what happens when you start to practice this stuff. But somehow it moves by connections that we don't see clearly at conscious level, by dynamics and laws that work. Mm-hmm. The giant rudder at the other end of the ship moves, and then gradually you notice that it starts to move in that direction. And if you stay in that direction, and you don't have to be perfect, that was such a wonderful thing when I found that. I didn't have to be perfect. I'm not. You just lean into it.
Right.